Hello and welcome to what we're calling Degree of Difference, a new format of show for the Climactic podcast, the flagship show of the Climactic Collective, the podcast network by and for Australia's climate community. That's getting to be quite the long title, but I love it. I love knowing what I'm about to say for once. Today is a pilot of this show and will be a bit of an experiment for how civil, respectful disagreements can be aired and difference of opinions can be discussed within the climate community, and hopefully discourse can ensue for the advancement of the solution of the climate crisis, which is, after all, what we're all here for. I'm your host for today's pilot, Mark Spencer, and joining me are Daniel Bleakley, woo, and Asher Coleman. Guys, feel free to introduce yourselves rather than me sort of giving a canned, this is the long list of achievements of each of you. Daniel, do you want to start us off by a little introduction to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Daniel Bleakley, and I'm a 38-year-old. I'm on Wurundjeri land, and I'd just like to say before we start as well to pay our respects to elders past and present. Just acknowledge that we are on stolen land as well. Grew up in central Queensland in a small coal mining town called Climactic, which is the closest town to the proposed Adani mine. There until I was 18, and then I did an exchange program to Germany, and then I came back and studied engineering, mechanical engineering. And during that time, I worked in a coal mine as well in my hometown for 3 months as part of a practical experience. I did my degree. I worked designing hydraulic equipment for a company in Brisbane before moving to the United Kingdom, where I worked in Scotland, in Aberdeen, in the oil industry. And I was designing a piece of machinery that would travel through oil pipelines in the North Sea to inspect them for damage and that kind of thing. It was a super high-tech piece of equipment, and I was one of the engineers that was working on that. So I've worked in the coal industry and the oil industry, strangely enough. Couldn't handle the Scottish winter anymore, so I ended up coming back to Australia, where I moved to Perth and worked as a mechanical engineer in the mining industry, project manager at a company in Perth, which manufactured mining equipment and other minerals processing equipment. So I was a project manager on a few projects for large mining companies, like for Rio Tinto, to build some equipment for them. So yeah, I've worked closely with the mining industry, and then I lost my job during the global financial crisis. I'd went from being on big bucks as an engineer in mining to not having any income and ended up working in a bar. So I then became, at the age of 27, I became a bartender. Great experience for me, and ended up starting a company, moved to Melbourne. I've run a printing company here, and then I've always been interested in climate change, but in the last 12 months, I've got into activism, and I've joined, the Greens and Extinction Rebellion. I've been very active because I'm getting really worried and really scared about what we're facing. And that's how I met Ash, was through the movement, and I also met Mark through the movement as well. So yeah, that brings me up to today.
Perfect.
As for me, I grew up on a permaculture property. So I've been sort of in the environmental movement pretty much since I was born. It was a teaching and demonstration site. So we had people come from all over the world to learn permaculture, which for anyone who doesn't know is basically an agricultural system based on the principles of sustainable design. It's actually an Australian movement. Bill Mollison, who sadly passed away, I think probably about a decade ago now. It's been a while. Was one of the founders, along with David Holmgren, who's Victorian. I've been part of the movement basically since I was born in some ways, and then did a bit of volunteering with pro-climate parties, and did what I think most people do, talk with their friends about it, get more and more concerned about climate, but not quite take that step to really doing a lot of personal action beyond, like recycling and so on for a while. And then after the 2019 election, I was like, okay, well, nothing's going to happen federally for 3 years at least, and we just don't have that time. We do not have the time to wait it out. So I can't sit on the sidelines. I need to do something. So I live out in Casey, out in Narre Warren. Unlike Brunswick or so on, there's not quite as much conversation out here about climate, or at least there wasn't back when I started. And I was like, okay, look, I'll start a group out here. We'll see what happens. It could crash and burn, but something needs to be done, and so I need to at least try.
Yeah.
And it turns out a lot of people had just been waiting for someone to start that movement. I'd been waiting as well. I've been waiting for someone to stand up and do something. I was like, okay, look, I'm going to start this group. We got a ton of interest very quickly, got the ball rolling really rapidly. We started talking with local councils. We decided that since federal politics wasn't going to do anything and state politics seemed a little intimidating to start with, let's go with local council. It's achievable, hopefully. And it certainly was. We've engaged with a good dozen local councils at this point. I've personally led climate emergency declaration campaigns in Kingston, Greater Dandenong, Denier, Monash, which unfortunately was unsuccessful, and Mornington Peninsula. And we've assisted other groups in campaigns out in Bass Coast, out in Stonington, helped found the Glenara Climate Action Network, did a little bit of lobbying for ER rangers, so forth. So we've been really heavy in that space, done a little bit of work federally and statewide since, met with a few members, tried to really push hard that we need to stay under 1.5 degrees. And hopefully we'll see some results out of that in the next month. Ideally, we'll see how we go.
Hey, can I just ask Asher a quick question on that? The history of the climate emergency declaration. I think Jane Morton told me that the first declaration made here in Melbourne in one of the councils here.
It was in Darebin City Council with I think Trent McCarthy, who moved the motion, actually is a contributor to Climactic, isn't he, Mark?
He's definitely a friend of the show. I don't think I've yet had him on, but I've seen him at things, and we've had good chats, and we're on good terms, Trent.
Yeah, so back in 2016 was the very first one, and then it didn't quite take off here at the time. I keep a little map of it, and in July 2019, there were 6 councils in all of Victoria that had declared a climate emergency. They were all clustered around the inner city. The furthest out was Brimbank. Now it's over 30, and it goes from Indigo in the north to Bass Coast in the south. The majority of Melbourne councils have declared. And for those of you listening, a climate emergency declaration isn't just a pat on the back. It's not just a motion. It comes with clear targets. In each of the councils where we've got an emergency declaration, the councils have all agreed to go carbon neutral by 2025, except for Bass Coast, which agreed to go carbon neutral by 2030. But they made up for that by saying their community would go to 2030 with them, which is very ambitious.
The
other councils
council buildings and council fleets can go carbon neutral, but the actual municipality going carbon neutral is a different story.
And the other, so they're getting the municipality carbon neutral. Most of them have agreed to aim for that by 2040. Councils have some levers to get there. They obviously need state and federal help to get everything done. But we've been working really hard on environmentally sustainable design and urban forest strategies and bulk purchasing agreements and things like that to really help get the municipalities over the line.
I've just put in the comments of the Facebook live stream. Sorry, Daniel. Just there's a link to lgcet.com, which is the local government climate emergency toolkit. That's been put together by Dale Martin, one of the councillors on Darebin City Council until very recently.
I actually volunteered on Dale's initial campaign back when he was first running in 2016.
Perfect. Wow. So he's just put this together and published it. It's a wonderful resource. Find a link to it there. Also a running tally of those of those councils who've declared emergencies at caceonline.org, caceonline.org.
Fantastic. And the organisation I founded to do that with is called Southeast Climate Action Network. We were really concerned that a lot of the push around climate was coming from like the inner north, which I used to live in the inner north. It's a fantastic place. I love it very much. But unless we have a swathe of Victorians really pushing for this from right across the state, we're not going to get to where we need to. So I was like, okay, let's try to build up the movement in the suburbs. And we've been very lucky and very successful in that.
Yeah. That's where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? It's the local communities. It's fantastic. And the fact that the EU now has declared a climate emergency as well. That just shows you from something that starts out small, it can just grow so quickly. It grows so big as well.
It's that old expression, from Darabin to Danzig.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the one.
So it sounds like you two have a lot in common. There's history, there's mutual respect, but it's okay for people to disagree about things within the climate community. And it happens a lot. And we need maybe a way to disagree better or to disagree publicly in a constructive way. Just quickly to frame what we're trying to do here, can you think of any examples of disagreements done well in the climate community? Because I'm sure we can all name and rehash and relitigate in our minds disagreements done in public that weren't constructive, and it's no point rehashing those. You seen any good examples of people disagreeing and coming off better for it? Or is this doomed to fail?
I don't know. I can't remember seeing any disagreements, to be honest, except for obviously the backlash to the Michael Moore documentary. Is that the kind of thing you're referring to, or
more between groups, more go to the name of this thing, a degree of difference. I might agree with you most of the time, but on this we really don't agree. But like, you've evolved my thinking, I've changed yours, and we're both kind of better off for it.
So for me, I think it's an interesting quirk of human psychology that although climate groups, and in fact everyone, disagrees on things fairly readily, we only remember the things that we disagree with that don't get resolved. So I could very easily label 15 disagreements that no one came off satisfied. And, even though I've had hundreds of conversations where there's been differences that have been resolved between us and been able to, as you say, evolve people's thinking, I couldn't name any, which is pretty funny.
That's a really good point. And so if this is successful, this pilot, and if this goes on to doing more of these, it will be kind of a cool thing to have historically, a way to look back on, I used to think X, and I was talking to someone who thought Y, and by the end of it, I thought X plus 1, and they thought Y plus 1, and I can kind of see how, I won't remember it as vividly because it wasn't a fight, but I can actually see that I iterated and I leveled up my understanding of something, which will be kind of, I think, a good thing. And by doing it in public like this, we're letting other people come along for the ride as well. And hopefully watching this while eating their dinner or having their Friday after work knockoff. So to get into the nub of it today, I don't have a great recap to give of the parliamentary side that really kicks it off, but it doesn't matter so much. But the background to this is the Greens, the Victorian Greens, the State Greens Party tabled a motion to say we should have a Victorian Green New Deal. This motion, I'm not sure exactly whether it was, just a motion without kind of any enforcement to it, or actually what the act was. I didn't get the time to do the research on this, but the thing passed. I know that through Victorian Parliament, I believe it was 22-15. And then in the wake of that, in sort of much celebration from people within the climate and the green space, not that those two are exactly overlapped, but both the green space and the climate space, people seem to be quite happy about this. And then there was a tweet yesterday morning by State Environment Minister, member of the Labour Andrews government, Lily D'Ambrosio, to say, and I quote, "Sorry guys, but this is laughable. A feel-good motion just before a state budget can't make a government do anything. The Labour budget gets delivered by Labour. You'll then tweet saying, hooray, we did it. Budgets take vision and hard work, not stunts. Hashtag only Labour." Takes us to why we're here today, because that kicked off a bit of a disagreement on how to respond to this tweet, and largely the position taken by Victorian Labour versus the Victorian Greens, who's taking appropriate action on climate change, who's taking delayed action or inappropriate action on climate change, and who's outright denying climate or the true severity of the climate crisis. Is there anything about that recap that you'd like to correct?
Sure, I could add a little more context to it. Essentially, the Senate passed a Green New Deal motion. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't a comprehensive suite of policies that we associate with a Green New Deal, but more the idea of a Green New Deal has been endorsed by the Senate. And I think it's worth pointing out that this was it was brought by the Greens, The Greens voted in support of it, obviously. Labor also voted in support. I think reason, we're not forgetting you. I just don't want to say you did things that I don't know whether you did or not.
This is a pilot. This is only a pilot. This is not the news.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
In the wake of that, Sam Ratnam, who is the leader of the Victorian Greens, as I think most of us would know, sent out a tweet celebrating that. She said under it, "This is the first time a Green New Deal has been formally endorsed in Australia. Absolutely. The next step is to ensure the government follows through in the upcoming state budget." And I think what riled Lily about that is some idea that I felt like she was trying to push back on the idea that the Greens brought forward this motion, and so therefore any climate-friendly things that come in the budget are green accomplishments rather than Labour accomplishments. So it was almost like she's trying to keep credits. Like, hey, we've done work here, so don't you go stealing credit for this. That's kind of where I sort of saw it coming from.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I really want to respond to that. But first of all, I have to say, I'm not representing the Greens with these views. My views today are my own. They're not the views of the Greens. I just want to make that clear. I'm a member of the Greens.
Yeah.
I'm a member of the Greens, and I'm a big supporter of the Greens. But what I say today does not represent the Greens. This is the point, that the fact that she took offence to it, in itself shows you that she doesn't understand. This isn't about who wins politically here. It's not about who wins politically. This is about getting the best climate policy we possibly can as fast as we can, so we can drive our emissions down as fast as we possibly can. No one should be taking any offence, and we should be doing everything that we can to ensure that the budget that gets announced next week, is it next week?
The sitting days are between the 10th of November and I think it goes up until just about the end of November. There's I think 3 or 4 days left of the year. So the budget should
next 2 weeks.
If we're serious about climate change, if we're serious about action on the climate crisis, then we need to focus on the budget and figure out what's the best policy we can possibly do to get us down as fast as we can. We need a World War II scale mobilization, and that's what I'm saying to Dan Andrews, and that's why I did the 10-day hunger strike last year, and that's why I got arrested and stuff like that, and I'm doing all this crazy stuff and spending 16 hours a day on bloody Twitter, yelling at politicians and journalists, which is what I do every single day. I yell at journalists and I yell at politicians through Twitter, and I do that because this is fucking serious, guys, and our politicians need to take it seriously, and that's why I get so passionate about it. And just the fact that she commented was enough to tell me that she's not serious about action on climate. We should have all been celebrating that moment, because that's a moment that I've been looking forward to for 20 years, and that should have been a celebration.
So I'm sorry I suppose to start off, I'm not representing Labor here. I'm not actually a Labor member, and I'm not affiliated with any party. I suppose from my background, I work with politicians from across the aisle, so Greens, Labor, even Liberals, when they're willing to come to the table to try to get policy through. Because out in the suburbs, we don't have the luxury of only having Greens and Labor to deal with, so we have to engage with everyone. I come across as a moderate. I'm not necessarily a moderate, but I am in favour of getting things done. I'm very sympathetic to the argument this should have been a celebration. It wasn't. I'm not actually defending the tweet. The part that I suppose I pushed back again is I believe you called Lily a climate denier in the wake of that, and I thought that was I thought that was not correct, and that it was poor strategy as well. And I suppose we'll elaborate on that as we go through. When it comes to the actual Green New Deal, I think we should be celebrating that. It was a momentous step forward. The Andrews government is relatively good on climate, and I'm hopeful that we'll see a few really big new announcements come out before the end of the year. There is a long way to go. We only have a 50% target for renewable energy generation by 2030, and that's simply not good enough, right? 40% by 2025, okay, I can accept that. But to go from only from 40% to only 50% in the next 5 years after that, not good enough. So there's definitely room for improvement. I'm not defending current policy settings.
Great opening statements. I would like to start there and just say, to recap kind of what kicked this off was the endorsement of a Green New Deal in Senate, Sam Ratnam's tweet, Lily's response, Dan's response to Lily saying, Lily, you're a climate denier and is it so much, so to that framing, so you're in that moment, you're sending this tweet out addressed to Lily D'Ambrosio saying the environment minister is a climate denier. Is it because of the disunity at a moment where it should be kind of celebrated that we like? Is this what were you disappointed in? I guess.
I guess I was really I was really disappointed because I've been watching a lot of stuff happen on Twitter for months, for many months. Like, just to let everyone know who doesn't know. I mean, anyone who follows me on Facebook has seen I just constantly pasting screenshots of tweets that I see and you know, all day basically, and people are just like, oh, Dan's going crazy. He's tweeting, you know, he's putting these screenshots up like 10 every hour. He's a
I know
lunatic.
Dan's not going crazy. Psychotic breaks don't last this long.
Yeah, that's right. But what I've been doing is I've been on Twitter all day, every day, following journalists, following politicians, like listening to politics every day, and just taking snippets out and pasting them onto my Facebook feed, just so I can go back through it someday and look at it, because it's been an incredible 6 months. And like the impression that I've been getting, because there's a lot of Labor people, a lot of Victorian Labor people who are on Twitter, and I've built up some really good relationships with them. I've interacted with some really fantastic people. There's been so much good vibes between Greens and Labor on Twitter. We haven't been attacking each other. We've both been supporting Dan Andrews. All the Green supporters have been supporting Dan Andrews. We've been out there fighting for him every day, especially against News Corp. On Twitter, we've been attacking News Corp, attacking Murdoch, right, for months, defending Dan Andrews, saying, bugger off, leave him alone. He's not, you know, don't pressure him to open up. We've been doing that on Twitter for months, and the Greens and the Labor work together to do that. And like the Greens and Labor just had really good vibes lately. And then I just thought we were about to see this, you know, great unity celebration of a Green New Deal in Victoria. And I, you know, saw that tweet and I thought, oh, that really sucks, you know.
So in that context, you've got people within the Victorian Labor Party who you enjoy interacting with, you're interacting with positively and productively. And so in that moment, though, where you're saying environment minister of the party that you believe in some, you know, is engaging productively, it goes back to why we're so like kind of like, oh, you called her a climate denier. Can I ask, you know, would you stand by calling Lily D'Ambrosio today, right now, a climate denier?
I haven't met Lily before, and to be honest, I don't know a lot about her. And when I said it, I was probably feeling pretty angry. And I'm sure that Lily is a lovely person. By my definition, my thinking of the definition of what a climate denier is, she would be, and any leader in this country and any leader in the world who isn't doing everything they possibly can to reduce emissions, does not understand the science, does not understand the urgency, and therefore is denying the science and is therefore a climate denier. That's why I think, that's why I said
very clear articulation. We can get into that. Asher, maybe to go to you on how do you kind of define the term climate denier in the late 2020s, and we can get into why these labels matter and how they change over time and Overton Windows stuff, but to kind of take a snapshot of you right now.
Sure. So for me, a climate denier is someone who is actively blocking policy. So for me, that's your Craig Kellys, that's your Peter Duttons. I know I've talked to Liberals. Liberals actually hate being called climate deniers, except for the ones that really like there's your like active like climate doesn't exist, or like climate change doesn't exist people, and then there's people within the Liberal Party who are like climate change exists, where we want to do something about it, but we're going to be way too slow. There's no defending that, but they hate being called climate deniers, even though they probably deserve it some of the time, or at least climate delayers, right? For me, Lily and people like her, they are moving as fast as they think is possible. Now that there's differences in opinion on how fast that is, right? Like if you take the XR definition, right? They want us to be at net zero by 2025, and by their standards, if you took Daniel's definition, Bernie Sanders is a climate denier because he only wants transport and electricity to be carbon neutral by 2030, and not even everything. So there's definitely a difference in opinion. The science at the moment says that as long as we get to carbon neutral by 2050, we can stay under 1.5. There's a lot of asterisks there, so I would not necessarily say it's as simple as as long as we're down to zero by then. We need to be moving fast. We need to be really squashing that curve quickly. If we can get to 67% reduction in emissions by 2030, then we can have that long tail out to 2050. But if it's a straight decline, then it really has to be by 2040.
Sorry, Asher. Can I just interrupt? We've got to go far. We've got to go as hard as we can. We can't targets. I don't even agree with the XR target. I don't think we should set it. We don't set a date 2025. We're going to get there by 2025. We're going to get there by 2030. We're going to get there by 2040. We get there as fast as we possibly can, right? That's the goal. The goal is not to get to net zero by 2030. That's a dumb target. A smart target is to go, how do we all maintain our current living standard, right? Our current living standard, and get to net zero as fast as we possibly can. And what's the economics for that? And what's the engineering for that? And then you attack that. And things like, building separated bike lanes throughout Melbourne so people can get on their bicycles and ride to work and feel safe. And let people leave their cars at home as much as they can. Get people walking in their communities and cycling in their communities. Get the cars to slow down. We can do that. That's easy. That's a policy that they can easily do. And the Greens have a great policy for that. So we need to change the target. The target's not, okay, we're going to get to 2030. We just go as hard as we can, as fast as we can. We all pull together and we have a war. It's got to be a warlike effort. And I don't want to make the war analogy, but I'm going to, because it's about logistics. It's not about actually fighting, but it's about logistics. Because the logistics of the Second World War was phenomenal. You had whole countries that transformed their industries, transformed their manufacturing to point it at the existential threat that was facing them at the time. Within 6 to 12 months, they converted factories over from making cars to making, army vehicles, etc. We can do the same. We can create solar and wind industries here. And people can be working in high-tech manufacturing. We can train people up, and we can be making our own renewable energy here. We can do that, but we need to act now, and we need to enough with these bullshit 2025, even XR, all of it, 2030, 2040, bin it. Let's get there as fast as possible.
It's a good thing to do.
Sorry.
That's why it's a pilot. And the problem with us climate folks is we all talk to people who disagree with us a lot, and we all have to come prepared with our arrows in our quivers, ready to throw down and debate. 3 of us are all on the same page. I know that for sure. No one's disagreeing with anything. It's about we're all in the crane, and we're all trying to get the box from point A to point B. We're just working out which levers in which order do we pull to get that job done. We all agree the box needs to move. So Asher, okay. I know you've got things to respond to and stuff, but I just want to, just quickly frame that with, there's a lot of other facets we, of course, haven't brought into this yet, and we're not going to. We need to, in order to do something productive, we kind of need to really narrow the scope down a little bit. And I just really want to focus, I guess, for this on the 2 terms, climate denier and climate delayer, when we apply them and why. And actually, how do we talk to other people in society using those terms effectively? Because we all want to get to the same place. Just quick question for the 2 of you. You've heard each other. You know each other. I know you both. Are you the same person who live in different places? Asher, if you lived in the north of Melbourne, would you sound a lot more like Daniel than you do day to day? And Daniel, can you see yourself being a bit, across the aisle a bit more like Asher has to be in Neri Warren?
No, I don't think so. I definitely respect what Daniel does, and I definitely think there's a place for it. I think Twitter activism gets kind of derided, and sometimes unfairly so. But I think there's also truths to the sort of argument that Twitter is a bubble. This sort of feeds you back into like a lot of what I want to say, like when I reply to what Daniel sort of said, which I'm going to signpost for myself so I don't forget. We were able to do the World War II mobilization effort because we brought people with us, because everyone was working together. If we turned around tomorrow and said, like, hey, we're going to like a World War II style total mobilization, we're going total war against this thing, we don't have the community buy-in for that yet. I would dearly love to get to the point where we do, but we don't have it yet, and it's really unfortunate that we don't, and that means there's still work to be done. I'm very much of the opinion that no matter where you are, whether you're out in a rural area like where I was born, or in the inner city, or in the outer suburbs where I am now, it's all about bringing community along with you.
To frame it back to you, Daniel, do you think if you lived in an area where it was harder to reach consensus on these things, or harder to get people to acknowledge the problem at all, would you kind of be okay with getting people to take step 1, 2, 3 to get them up and going?
So yeah, that's actually a really good question, but I don't think my approach, I don't think has anything to do with where I live. My approach at the moment probably has a lot to do with how I grew up, which was in the country, in Claremont, which would make where you live look like metropolitan. I think that so many people should be getting into community activism and community building. Totally. Why I do what I do is because I believe that the media, in particular the Murdoch media, Channel 7, Channel 9, are not telling the truth about the climate crisis to people who live in those communities across Australia. So in everyone's home, like in my family's home, Channel 7 is on all the time, but Channel 7 is owned by 7 Group Holdings, and 7 Group Holdings is owned by Kerry Stokes, and 7 Group Holdings owns 4 gas plants and an oil plant, right? So the company that 7 Group Holdings, which owns Channel 7 and the West Australian newspaper, also owns all these oil and gas assets. So why would David Koch and Sam, like, why would they report on the climate crisis when their boss is making millions from oil and gas, right? This is how crazy it is. And
well, I fully agree with you that the media environment in Australia makes it really hard, and that's why I actually think that what you do is really valuable. 7 has, in fact, done a little bit of climate reporting, because I know that because actually I got an interview on 7 once over the Monash Human Sign. Interesting to see how they framed it too. They sort of let us have our say and didn't frame it as bad, but then the headline was Climate Fury, which was nothing to do with what we were doing at all. A little bit of an editorial difference from the journalists on the ground there.
Well, they just can't own oil and gas assets and be a truthful media organization. It's impossible.
Completely agree.
Just on top of that, and when I do talk, I may sound angry, and my anger's not directed at you both. Just so you know.
We know.
I know.
Sorry.
Or you watching?
Apologize. Or anyone watching. I'm not getting angry at you. I'm getting angry at the situation that we're in, right? Because it really sucks.
We were basically told in the 90s, which I was very young in, but look, we'll wait for the technology to get better, and we'll do something, and it'll all be fine. And it was all not fine. And we have waited far too long. You only have to look at it feels like forever ago, but it was only like 11 months ago that we had like half the country on fire. It's worth being mad about this.
It is.
The way we channel that anger is really important, and I suppose that's where my real difference to you on do we call people who are acting but maybe not acting quite as fast as we would like? Do we call them a climate denier? I don't think so. I think the better method there is engagement. And to sort of also quickly, because I know you're going to want to answer that, but also when you are talking about the targets thing, I understand where you're coming from. I think targets have a valuable place. you can tell that because the person arguing against having a specific target and arguing for just going as fast as we can is ScoMo. And ScoMo wants that because ScoMo is like, well, look, if we don't have a target, as fast as we can is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah,
what you consider to be as fast as we can is very different to what like even XR does, even what the Greens do.
Well,
certainly what the Liberals do.
I'm a big, as people who know me know that I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, a big fan of Tesla and a big fan of Elon Musk. And he doesn't like set these targets. They just go for it.
He famously sets them, but then doesn't meet them. Very, very famously, he sets them. He sets lots of targets. He just never meets them.
I don't want to get down
targets that cannot be met, and then delivers them like 5 years behind what his schedule was and 10 years ahead of whatever everyone else's schedule was.
Okay. Let's get it. Let's get some targets. Sure. Let's get a 2030 target or whatever. Let's get them in, but let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
Let's get the policy. We have to make it known that there are solutions out there. That like the technology's all there. That's the thing. Like my background is in engineering, and I always wanted to work in renewable energy. But then I was as I got older, I realized the problem's not a technical one. Solving climate isn't a technical problem; it's a political problem, and that's why now I'm doing what I do, and that's why now I spend all my day on Twitter because I'm doing politics. All the politics happens on Twitter. Everything.
I strongly disagree that all politics happens on Twitter.
Well, maybe not. Maybe stuff at the public bar happens.
The way, oh dear, Christian Porter might not like this episode. No, what I was going to say is the difference between how we act and I think we both have a really valuable part to play in them. Basically, what your goal is, you're trying to shift the Overton window. You're trying to talk with, influence the public conversation on Twitter and in the halls of Parliament through that. And so that's one very important thing. It's something XR does quite well as well. They go out and make, if you're being uncharitable, you'd call them stunts. If you're being charitable, you'd call them legitimate expressions of anger, which I do think they are. I think XR does a very good job. But basically, they're out there waving the flag, saying, we need to go faster, we need to go harder, and getting that into the conversation. And then what people like me do and what CCAN does and so on is we then come in behind that and we go, okay, let's build up the community support to actually get this happening. Talk with people who are not yet convinced, who are like, okay, look, I hear about climate. I don't really understand what, like you say there's jobs in here. What jobs are here other than like installing solar panels? That's something we hear a lot. People who are like, okay, look, we recognize climate change is happening. It's a problem for my grandkids' generation. So that's something we get less now that the fires have happened, but like a year ago, we got a ton of. Our goal is to then build up the community support to then actually get that stuff done, because you don't get anywhere if the community's not in favour. Otherwise, you just get people like Donald Trump elected, you get ScoMo re-elected. You need to build that community groundswell. And Twitter is fantastic at influencing the conversation. Twitter doesn't build the community groundswell. Most people aren't on Twitter. Most people don't pay attention to Twitter. I love what you do.
This is where you miss the point. Sorry, Asha, but this is where you miss the point, right? Okay. Everyone who's not on Twitter, this is what you don't get about Twitter. It's not about influencing people on Twitter. It's about influencing influential people and journalists who then have programs and change their discourse. So if you can get someone like a particular journalist more concerned about climate change, as they should be, then when they do their reporting, when there's four corners are looking for stories, or when David Spears is questioning the Prime Minister of Australia, will he ask him about the climate crisis and how urgent it is and why he's not taking action now? So David Spears is on Twitter. So we need to tweet. We can use strategies, and we can alert him to how important it is for him to ask those questions to the Prime Minister. Because when he asks those questions to the Prime Minister on Insiders, the whole country sees it. So by influencing one person, David Spears, to ask the right question to the Prime Minister on the national broadcaster, you can influence millions of people. Okay, that's why I do it. That's just one example of the thousands of things that I've been involved in over the last 6 months with people, with hundreds and thousands of amazing people on Twitter, and we're all connected. There's thousands of people connected on Twitter who are working together, getting hashtags trending.
Tell us the election day story.
5 minutes.
Or the election week Biden story.
So, well,
settle in here.
quick background on PR guy. He's been doing a lot of the I Stand with Dan stuff and like getting a lot of support around Dan Andrews trending. And he's got a really great sense of humor. He's got a little Simpsons character as his, I think it's Troy McClure. Yeah, that's it. And he's fantastic. He's really funny, and he's really he or she, but I believe it is a he. I'm not sure, but he has software that can analyze graphs on Twitter. So when there's like a poll, and one, that what was happening was they were running these polls, and then all of a sudden the conservative view would spike, and his software picked up that there was this artificial liking or manipulation of polls on Twitter.
Is this
and he
something different?
Scott Spots, that's another thing. That's another story. But
we'll leave that one for another day.
We can leave that one for another day. Yeah, that's another really funny one. But so PR guy picked up this odd behavior on these Twitter polls, and then he screenshotted it and sent it to Paul Barry from MediaWatch, and it was on MediaWatch. So PR guy's tweets were on MediaWatch, and when PR guy started out, he was originally tagging me a lot in his tweets so that I'd go and retweet him. So he'd tag me, and then I'd go and retweet him around, and because he knew I was, all over the shop on Twitter. And then his account grew really rapidly, and like he got to like 10,000, and now he can just get stuff trending, right? So if PR guy he's got such a good network that he can whip up a hashtag and get it trending to number one. Like, that's power, If you can get something trending on Twitter, it's being seen by everyone, like the politicians, all the journalists, the lawyers, all the influential people in the country who are on Twitter are all seeing that hashtag.
If you did a word cloud of news coverage, the words trending on Twitter do get said a lot, and it does accompany news coverage of a thing. And until it is trending on Twitter, it's like it doesn't matter. And then as soon as it's trending on Twitter, that is like a huge validator, and it opens that door to news coverage, which is interesting.
As I've said before, I really do support what you do there. I would again push back on the idea that everyone sees it. For a large part of the country, I know when you say everyone, you're talking about like influential people, right? But when I think of everyone, I think of the whole community, the whole country. I would say the majority of Australians pay almost no attention to Twitter. Now, that's not counting like the spin-offs that you had, right? Like, so you have a Twitter hashtag, it gets talked to ScoMo, it's on the nightly news. Then people see it. If it makes that transmission, something trending on Twitter by itself doesn't create change. It can lead to change being created, but I'd kind of really like to get back to conversation about our climate deniers. I suppose the core of our difference, right, is if you'd let me sort of like phrase your argument for you, my understanding of it's essentially Lily isn't doing enough, therefore she is a climate denier, and therefore, or even if you didn't use those words, therefore because she isn't doing enough, she needs to be demonized for that. She needs to be called out for that, right? And I suppose the counter argument, the one I'm making, is like, we do need to call out when action isn't happening fast enough. Fast enough is the beholder. Although there's still more to be done, antagonizing actual allies, not even potential allies, but actual allies, is just a way to create infighting within the climate movement, which Lily is a part of. And so while there's room for conversations about moving faster, I really think that emphatic demonization, I think, is probably not helpful in this case.
Would you like to do the same there, Daniel?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the question and the comments. And I don't enjoy like attacking people, even though I've been doing it a lot on Twitter, and I don't want to go out and attack people, comments or whatever, and calling them things through social media. And I'm sure that Lily is like a lovely person and means well and is doing everything she can within her power like landscape. So her power landscape's probably really complex, as is every politician's power landscape, and got all this different influence from different angles. I totally understand that. That's an incredibly difficult position to be in. And I was probably, a bit angry at the time because it meant so much to me, and it's something that I've been looking forward to for 20 years probably, to see the turning point of when we hit peak madness and we start to, actually get ourselves at least trending towards safe climate. So I was probably a bit upset, and I probably said something that maybe I shouldn't have. But at the same time, if we can define climate denialism, let me define climate denialism, and I'll retract calling her a climate denier, but I'm going to define climate denialism. So, if we believe the science of the climate science, it's very scary, and we're already passing tipping points. And when we pass too many tipping points, it'll just accelerate, and we're talking about exponential acceleration, and we don't come back from that. It's game over. Okay, so there's no like rise and fall. This is like now or never. It's now or never. If you're a leader and if you're in a position of power and you're not doing everything that you possibly can to reduce our emissions, then you are in denial of the science of climate change. Because if you understand the science of climate change, you would know how urgent it is, and you would be doing everything in your power to reduce our emissions. That's how I would define climate denialism.
So we've gone an hour and 3 minutes without saying the term Overton window, and we were going to talk about it before, but it's already been...
I mentioned it.
Sorry, I missed it. There's been a lot of words. I'd love to get into that and sort of like what the purpose of the Overton window is. It does get discussed a lot within climate. And if I can just quickly, because it has been said, I'll just quickly give the definition for Overton window. And rather than have you both kind of give your understandings and like talk about how we kind of, that was a really interesting articulation just there, Daniel, of the understanding of being a climate denier, how you can apply that label to mean something more than it means now, that it kind of moves the ball forward, as it were. Just the quick definition of Overton window. Ironically, it's literally the definition of things that don't stay static. So the definition of Overton window shouldn't remain static, but here's the current definition from Wikipedia. The Overton window is the range of policies politically acceptable to the mainstream population at a given time. It is also known as the window of discourse. The term is named after Joseph P. Overton, who stated that an idea's political viability depends mainly on whether it falls within this range, rather than on politicians' individual preferences. According to Overton, the window frames the range of policies that a politician can recommend without appearing too extreme to gain or keep public office, given the climate of public opinion at that time. To very quickly, if we can, is that your understanding of Overton window? And I'm sure we've all used it in discourse. And how do you mean it when you use it?
That is my definition. There's greater ambition that needs to be taken. So bringing this back to the policy at hand, right? That is how I'd go with the Overton window. The Overton window in Victoria at the moment allows for a fairly ambitious climate policy, more ambitious than the one we currently have. And I'm very much looking forward to finding out if that's the one we're going to have, because we're awaiting the new emissions reduction targets that will come out for the next decade. We're awaiting the state budget, which we have been told has several really great climate policy announcements in it. Some have already been announced, like the 300 megawatt battery, which will be, I think, the biggest in the world, at least one of the biggest in the world. It's like twice the size of Horndale, which was the biggest 3 years ago.
South Australia's big battery.
Yes.
The Musk battery, as some people refer to it.
Yeah, the Elon battery.
Or the Mike Cannon Brooks, the Twitter battery. It's all circular here.
Hey, there you go. That's
there
the Twitter.
That was in fact a very concrete example of good Twitter.
The battery that Twitter built.
Is there a better example? Sorry to cut over. Is there a better example of how powerful Twitter is? One tweet and bang, you've got a massive battery.
As I said, I've never said that Twitter activism is useless. Yeah. Just that it's not the whole picture, and that we have to go beyond it.
Totally. No
Daniel, your understanding of Overton window, is that any different?
I learnt the meaning of Overton window from one of the most effective climate activists in Australia, Jane Morton, who I met through Extinction Rebellion. And I think we mentioned Jane earlier, when she was integral to setting up the first climate emergency declaration. And so I went to a talk that Jane did, an intro talk to XR, and she discussed the Overton window there. And basically, XR is trying to shift the Overton window, and the Overton window is, say, where the discussion is like neoliberal lines that have been pushed out over decades, is that there is a debate, or that, there's a debate around climate science, or there's two sides to the argument, and that's shifting. That's pulling it away from where it should be, which is on the science.
I understand your framing of the Overton window.
Yep.
Excellent. Yep. So I've got just a couple more kind of main points to hit, and then we can maybe call it a successful pilot. I was discussing this topic with my co-host on Serially Curious, one of the shows on the Climactic Collective, Eve Brennan, and she suggested this phrase as a discussion point for this, which is, justice delayed is justice denied. This is a legal maxim. It means that if legal redress or equitable relief to an injured party is available, but it's not forthcoming in a timely fashion, it's effectively the same as having no remedy at all. This phrase has roots in the Bible. It's mentioned in Magna Carta, and it was quoted in 1970 by the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Burger. I'm sure, there's thousands of other references to this truism. How do you apply this to this particular discussion? Asher?
Sure thing. So I actually agree with it. To be honest, I think that the delay in climate action that we've seen up until now is pretty criminal. Feel very sympathetic to, I think Daniel is very good at showing his anger at the lack of the status quo. I'm more circumspect about it, I think. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the same frustration, the same anger that we've been getting delay after delay after delay, and look, just get on with it. We have the technology; it's all there. With things that we have today, we can get to 100% renewables. We can get to net zero carbon. We can do it. It just requires a political will, and it just requires the community support to do so. And I think it's hard because it's a constantly moving target, and there is never enough. There's, no matter what we do, there's always more we can do. If we were like, okay, look, we've got a plan to get to 100% renewables by 2030. They're like, okay, look, for the right price, we can get there earlier. The question is trying to make sure that we can do enough to keep us in a safe climate future, which is hanging by an absolute thread. Don't get me wrong. We still are able to stay under 1.5 degrees. If Trump had won, that would be impossible. If we don't come back to the next climate conference in 2021 in Glasgow, if we don't come to that with stronger targets, and when I say we, I mean the world, 1.5 isn't possible. If we make those targets but then don't meet them, 1.5 isn't possible. So we're hanging by a thread. If we can still do it, things have to go right at this point to stay under 1.5. It's a little easier. There's a little more leeway to stay under 2. To stay under 1.5, we're just barely there, and we need to be going full throttle. We have to do it in a way that we can bring people with us. Otherwise, it all just gets reversed 4 years later when you vote in a bunch of climate deniers. If you don't get enough support from the community for action on climate, they will not vote for climate-friendly candidates. They'll go, "Oh, look at these loons who are paying more attention on climate than they are on jobs or whatever." And even though you and I both know that there are no jobs on a dead planet, that's not a message that is ubiquitous in the community. It's not a message that everyone has received. It is a message that the state government has received, interestingly. They're very interested in the transition to renewables because they're very jobs focused. They're actually a lot more jobs focused than even I am. And they can see a huge benefit as well as to transitioning, as well as the downsides of not. And I think that's something that, to quote another book you quoted, Uninhabitable Earth, going to go from Rebecca Huntley's How to Talk About Climate Change in a Way That Makes a Difference. There's definitely room for this sort of fear that, we are heading towards an unsafe future and that we need to act now. There needs to be hope as well. That fear needs to be tempered with hope. And to do that, we need to show the positive future that we have with us, which we do have. We're not as great about talking about it, unfortunately. We're very good about talking about the dangers that are coming, that the urgent need to act because of all the terrible things that will happen if we don't. And all of that is true. That alone is not enough to bring people with us, and we need people with us to get action. So I think we don't spend nearly enough time talking about the benefits. I think there's a really famous cartoon that if climate change turns out to not have been real, which unfortunately I wish climate change wasn't real, but it is very, very real. But he goes, if climate change is real, we just made a better world for nothing. I think that really comes down to it, but we really have to be pushing that.
Daniel, justice delayed is justice denied. Is that the same, or climate justice delayed is also climate justice denied?
I tend to agree with that, because we can't just put it off now, because it's really like all or nothing. We don't get justice after we go through climate change. We all just, life just gets progressively worse every year, and you have no hope for the future whatsoever. But at the moment, we do have hope. We've got incredible technology being built by companies like Tesla with their massive batteries and their electric vehicles, which will eventually become like robo-taxis, and you'll probably see they'll end up being like a public service, autonomous taxi service that goes around the city, but people don't really understand Elon Musk's business model that well. I think that's the direction that they're heading in. But regardless, the technology is there. And even the manufacturing capacity of Tesla is exploding. So they're set to do 2 million vehicles next year, up from like 1 million this year. They are going gangbusters, and we're going to see this technology rolled out across the world very quickly. So we can get to net zero a lot faster than these politicians are telling us. A lot of the politicians at the federal level are connected with coal, oil, and gas companies. And this is another reason why I'm quite an angry person these days. I never used to be. Used to be a really friendly guy. But I'm really angry now because I learned so much about all these different connections between politicians, lobby groups, fossil fuel industry representative companies, and the oil industry, the coal industry companies, the gas companies. Side note, a friend and I set up this thing called Access Disrupt, and we started making these memes showing different corruption scandals, because there's so many. We thought, how do we show all this corruption? Because people go, oh yeah, there's corruption there now and then, but you don't see it all together. So we tried to put it all together. So people go, holy shit, there's like so much corruption out there, and there is. And so when you read that, it just depresses you, and you're like, oh, we're actually going to suffer the consequences of climate change because of a whole bunch of corrupt fossil fuel connected politicians, right? That's pretty hard to stomach. Probably not going to have, don't really want to have children because I'm so worried about climate change. And these corrupt bastards have taken that from us, right? So if we want to talk about justice, I go back to the threads, right? Just to give you a quick idea, Alexander Downer, who was the foreign minister of this country in the Howard government, after he left Parliament, 6 months after, he set up a lobby firm called Bespoke Approach. Basically, that lobby firm lobbies for a few of the largest oil companies in Australia, like Woodside Petroleum and Santos, right? So Downer's from South Australia, Santos is from South Australia. These guys don't want us to get to 100% renewables because we won't be buying any of their oil and any of their gas. These are the guys that have been in Parliament for 20 years, more than 20 years, right? And they're connected to the fossil fuel industry as if they're going to want us to get to net zero. That'd be the dumbest business person ever. Why would you destroy your own industry? It's crazy.
You would be surprised there, actually. I fully agree with you on the corruption. I was going to point out that at this point, it's far cheaper to create new solar and new wind than it is to create new coal. Within 5 or 10 years, it's going to be cheaper to create new solar or new wind than running existing coal. So that industry is dying. Whether we do something or not,
that's fine. But what's not fine is when you learn about how the macroeconomic system works. MMT. Can we do MMT a little bit?
No, you can't. Right now, I 100%. I'm fascinated by it, but it is definitely a whole hour. So we got to give someone.
Okay, we'll do that another time. Sorry, Ash.
All good. There's 2 more points to get through.
Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
Wasn't for lack of trying. Go for it.
So I would say that what we want more than justice is for our government to act.
Sorry, Daniel, we're losing you quite a bit. It's gone quite staccato. I'm going to take us to another question. This is like question time, and I'm now stepping in as Hamish McDonald and doing the moving on thing. One question here. I'm going to give you each 2 minutes to answer, and then I've got one final wrap up, and you can start thinking about it now, and I want you to think, have you learned anything or got a greater appreciation for each other's perspective than you had at the start? Is there anything you're going to take away thinking like, Asher had a good point, or I hadn't agreed with Daniel about that before? Even if you don't agree, just maybe something that you thought was well articulated. But before that, a question on what would you do if you were not king for the day, maybe not queen for the day, but Dan for the day. If Dan was a dictator, and Dan's not a dictator, but hey, keeping it within the Victorian context, your word is law. That law is to be upheld by societal institutions, the power of the courts, the power of the police. You have got one day in which to make said laws. What do you do? And for the sake of this discussion of like moving things forward in the way you think is most actually effective, people are the exact same, just you can set some laws. This is a thought experiment rather than a test question. You don't have to get anything right, and I'm not going to grade you. You're going to have 2 minutes each, though, and I will enforce it. I'll give you a 1 minute warning and a 30-second warning, and then you're out. Who wants to go first? I think it's Asher, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Asher.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so what would I do? First thing, I'm going to try to keep this within the realms of the possible. I would set a renewable energy target of 100% renewables by 2030. I'd probably push up the 2025 target to 50% or maybe 60%. We'll see. I would set your lawn to close down. Wouldn't close it down overnight because unfortunately we still need its energy until we get replacements up online. But I would schedule it to be shut down. I'd also start scheduling the shutdowns of the other coal plants to happen over the next decade as we can get more fuels online. I'd try and deal with Tasmania for their link to become the quote-unquote battery of the nation. I would move to have a statewide fast charging network, which is already happening, but not happening nearly fast enough. If it was federal, I'd remove the like the luxury tax for EVs, but I can't do that. State only. I would put a lot of investment out into the community to to create a transition into clean jobs. Try to re-energize our manufacturing industry, especially lithium-ion batteries. So on, we really need to be able to create community benefits. Oh no, I'm running out of time. I'd try to get as much out into the regions as possible. I think our regional Victoria has unfortunately suffered a bit of stagnation, a bit of economic decline. I'd really like to use the opportunity for transition to revitalise the suburbs, and I only have 10 seconds, so I'm going to finish it there. Great. Good start.
Well done. Very interesting. Star of the South,
nice
offshore wind farm.
100%.
All things that Dan can do. Very interesting.
I tried to keep it within the possible things that could be done. Otherwise, it'd be like, yeah, let's get to like 100% renewables by 2021. Not possible.
Wonderful. All right, Daniel, are you ready? 3. Oh, internet. Oh no, he's smiling, but it's frozen. It's going to work at all.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. Oh, we really hope you don't freeze out during.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously at state level, if there's a budget, then I'll list out the cheap ones, the cheap stuff like first, I guess. So I think the best thing that we could do is have a bicycle superhighway through Melbourne and just have good separated bike lanes everywhere. I used to live in Amsterdam. 70% of people cycle in Amsterdam. It's amazing. The air's really clean. The city's really quiet. Like you don't have all the pollution getting into people's lungs, and like it's really unhealthy. So getting more people onto bikes and pedestrians and walking and, you know, not having cars running through our communities. Like, I live in this beautiful spot and there's all these cars going through everywhere. Let's, you know, slow the cars right down. Let's get on our bikes and get walking around. That's the first thing I do. Really encourage people to get out into their streets. The people need to take back the streets, right? And it doesn't cost much. You know, we're spending billions on roads. Let's leave. We don't need the roads because we don't need any more highways because Tesla technology, but I'll tell you about that another time.
Keep option over, half your time is gone.
More cars on smaller number of roads with Teslas because they can bunch up. But that means that we don't need the roads. So take the spending from the roads, put it into bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and these super blocks where you've got these amazing walking areas, and go over to Amsterdam and Copenhagen for a trip. Lily, I'm sure you'd like to do that, to check out their fantastic infrastructure they've got over there. And I know I haven't said many, but I just wanted to make that point because that's probably the most important one that I think there is. And then obviously heaps of renewables, heaps of storage facilities and electric vehicles. I think Tesla, you know, their charging stations are incredible. People don't understand how far ahead Tesla is on everyone else. No one's going to catch them. They're just, so I don't know how to deal with that with public ownership, but yeah, sorry, got sidetracked.
All good. Done. Very good point.
I would like to say I'd very much like to see a gigafactory in Victoria. However,
yes.
would also like to point out, while Tesla is great at many things, there's definitely issues with Tesla regarding unionization. Regarding Musk is a bit of an asshole boss, unfortunately.
Let's talk about Tesla on another episode.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd love to. I thought we brought up Tesla enough that I really had to mention that.
We can't end this story. We can't end this fantastic discussion with your last sentence being Musk is an asshole.
We're not yet. Now say something nice about each other.
Such a good chat.
You can.
No, I like Ash and I. We're not like against each other, and the climate movement. It's a multi-pronged movement. Right?
I'm playing on easy.
I know that's a cliche, but it's true, isn't it? Like it's true. We need to hit the community. We need to hit the media. We need to hit everyone.
Yeah, you're cutting out
everyone's
again.
involved in this, and we need to change all of our systems. We need to change all of our systems.
So we got most of that, but yeah, you're cutting out a little bit again, Daniel. Asher,
final question?
Yeah. Final question is, what did you take away from each other's comments and sort of thought processes? If you take away one thing from what the other person had to say, what would it be?
Okay. One thing I found really, really interesting was when Daniel talked about the power of using Twitter to create a conversation outside of Twitter. I definitely think that when it's like just on Twitter, it misses the majority of Australians, unfortunately. But he made some really, really valuable points about how what he does on Twitter can then jump across into the outside world, and then can influence people who don't even have Twitter accounts, who have no idea what a hashtag is. I thought that was a really, really valuable, interesting comment, and it made me think about things slightly differently.
Very good. Daniel, final
cool.
words. Yes.
Ash said a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed listening to tonight, and I do like. We're not in competition at all on anything. We're just working in different fields. Really, we're in different departments. We're basically in different departments.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things I guess Ash made me reflect a little bit more on my comment to Lily, and it was probably said in the heat of the moment as well. You know, like I was pretty upset. Yeah, I apologize. I take it back. But by my definition of climate denialism.
Yeah, I found
but
that.
I do apologize.
No, that I took a lot away from that. I found that really productive. I'd call this a rousing success. I definitely want to do more of these. Thank you both so much for joining us for this, for the first ever, whether we keep calling it Degree of Difference. I think I'm in love with the name now, so I think it's going to stick. Call out for cool cover art for this. If anyone has any good ideas for what this type of content with that name, Degree of Difference, should look like. Let me know. If you know of any good hosts for something like this, if you know of any good guests who have honest disagreements and who can talk about them from a place of mutual respect and productive engagement, we're happy to host them. And thank you so much for being the first to do so.
Awesome.
I think Daniel's going to be champing at the bit to take me to account on my comment on Tesla at some point.
Yeah, they'll be around too for sure. And I just want to thank you both. This has been really enjoyed it. It's great to have these kind of these discussions, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of it. Yeah.
I've had worse Friday nights.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.
Live video over. You're gonna have the fake goodbye and then the real goodbye after when you're off camera. No one is watching us anymore.
Okay, now I can plug my phone.
Oh, okay, cool.
Right, that's right.
I'm like, I couldn't plug it in before because if I plug it in, then
Daniel, I'm sorry about the couple cutouts you had, but overall, you were coming through really well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I forgot. Well, I didn't realize we were going to go that long, but I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we did. I'm obviously really glad we did. And
I was gonna say it's really interesting debating you, Daniel, because basically you're like you put out like it's almost like a truthful version of a Gishgalov. You put out like 5 or 10 different things, and I'm like. I actually 90% agree with all of these things. So unlike a Gishgalov where if you don't know, they throw out basically 100 false statements and then the time taken to deny them.
What's a Gishgalov?
A Gishgalov. So basically, it's a rhetorical technique in debating, where someone puts they'll just say false thing after false thing. Ben Shapiro is really great at it. He'll say climate change isn't real, and polar bears are thriving, and 10 other things, and you can own and here's 2 minutes to say it, and you can now to rebut any one of them, any single one of them is going to take more than 2 minutes. So you put your 2 minutes and debunk one of them, and okay, you debunk that, but then he's got 19 other statements that you haven't had time to refute, and so it's for the audience you couldn't refute that just because you spent all your time refuting one. You're a truthful version of that, where instead of being full of lies, you put out 10 different statements, and I'd really like to get into all of these things, and I only have time to get into one. You had a really I was going to say you had a really interesting statement about how the Greens and Labor work together. About how the Greens and Labor work together on Twitter. Found that really interesting because I've got both sides sort of things on this. If you looked at the Roy Morgan poll that came out today, actually more Green supporters support Dan Andrews than Labor supporters do. So 90% of Green supporters support Dan in how he's been tracking, but only 82% of Labor supporters do. So I found that very funny. But then on the other hand, people really underestimate the degree of difference between Labor and the Greens, and there's especially at a federal level, there's a lot of trauma, in fact, from the Labor side, where they almost feel like they were betrayed by the Green community.
And they went on like that for another 20 minutes or so, and it was so great being part of this conversation, getting to host it, make some space for it, for these two people who get along so well and have so much in common, but just to have a space where you can tease out the degrees of difference between their perspectives. Thank you to both my guests, Daniel Bleakley and Asher Coleman. We had no idea what to expect. We had no idea what it was going to be like, but I think you'll hopefully agree that what we landed on was worthwhile, it was fun, and hopefully you'll want to hear more. So this is coming to a screen near you. It's going to be a video series, actually. It's going to be streamed on simpatico.tv, CIMPATICO.tv, and the audio of it will be then released on Climactic. So to start off, I'm not sure yet whether it's going to have its own feed or whether it's going to be bonuses on the Climactic feed, or honestly, probably the Climactic Candid feed sounds like the perfect place to put this. If you know anyone out there who is a earnest, genuine, hardworking member of the climate community, and they have a friendly, or maybe even not so friendly, disagreement with someone else, but they're willing to engage with them in an honest, constructive, productive, and healthy way, that is exactly the type of conversations I'm looking to host on Degree of Difference. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Mark Spencer, the host for this pilot, but as you probably heard already, I am actively looking for other hosts to take this on as well, to either just spread the load or to completely replace me so I can just get into the good fun of producing and editing and running a podcast network in my spare time. So if you know anyone out there who's been a debate moderator before, or is just always that person in arguments at the pub who's playing referee, they would be perfect to do this. Just get them in touch with me. You can reach me at hello@climactic.fm. And thank you so much for listening to this pilot episode of Degree of Difference. Share it with a friend, leave us a rating and review, and please reach out, let us know what you thought. We really appreciate hearing your opinions. Keep up the fantastic work and take care of each other in these climactic times. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to Climactic, the flagship podcast of the Climactic Collective, a podcast network dedicated to lifting the voices of the climate community. You can find out more about the people of the Climactic Collective and all the shows on the network at climactic.com.au. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep up the great work and take care of each other in these climactic times.
The Climactic Collective.